All right, well, hello everybody. Happy Friday. What I've got for you today is another activator with 4 multi-step inequalities that we will do together right now. And then once you finish this, you need to do the comparing scientific notation assignment that's also up on Google Classroom. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into these multi-step inequalities first, and then you can go on to that next lesson. All right, so my first one is 4 times 3x minus 1 is going to be less than 2 times x plus 3. All right, so since I have parentheses, the first thing I need to do is distribute. And remember, I'm going to treat this just like I would any other equation. The only difference is that there's an inequality symbol there. Okay? So 4 times 3x is going to be 12x minus 4 is less than 2 times x, which is 2x plus 6. Okay? So that's my first step. Let me just zoom in a little bit for you. All right, so then my next step is going to be moving my variable over here. So I subtracted 2x from both sides. So that's going to give me 10x minus 4 is less than 2x, oh, excuse me, that 2x is already subtracted. So it's going to be less than 6. All right, so then the next thing I do is I add 4 to both sides. So that gives me 10x is less than 10. Divide both sides by 10. That gives me x less than 1. Okay? So x less than 1. And so when I come over here to graph this inequality, I make my number line. And I put 0 at the center of my number line. So since I'm x less than 1, I come over here and I graph the 1. And I make an open circle because 1 is not included in my solution set. And I would just shade to the left, showing x less than 1. All right, so let's look at our next one. 22 minus, and it's going to be 4x minus 2. And that's all going to be greater than 2 times x plus 3. Okay? So I see parentheses, so I'm going to have to do some distributing. So if I start on this side of my equation, I can bring down my 22. However, I do have to distribute the negative to everything on the inside. So negative times that gives me negative 4x. A negative times a negative gives me plus 2. And all of that's going to be greater than 2x plus 6. Okay? So I distributed. Now if you notice on my left side of the inequality equation, I've got to combine my like terms. So I have 22 minus 4x plus 2. So when I combine my 22 and 2, that becomes 4x plus 24 is greater than 2x plus 6. So then I'll just subtract the 2x from both sides. So that gives me negative 6x plus 24 is greater than 6. Subtract 24 from both sides. So now I have negative 6x is greater than, so 6 minus 24 is negative 18. All right, so now we got to think about it. My golden rule of an inequality. When I multiply or divide by a negative, what am I going to do with this sign? The sign's going to flip. So when I divide by -6, that becomes x. My sign flips to x less than 3. Okay? So if I go to graph this, there's the 0 on my number line. And if I just put a 3 over here, so again, x less than 3, I'm going to have an open circle and shade everything to the left, indicating that all of my solution set's going to be less than the number 3. All right. All right, so my next one is going to be 3 is less than or equal to 2x minus 1 divided by 3. Okay, so whenever I have an inequality, I cross multiply the same as I would if this was a normal cross product. So remember, whenever I'm working with fractions, that hopefully you can see that my red's going a little dry. That imaginary 1 that is underneath, there's my marker. All right, the imaginary 1 that is your denominator. Okay? So when I do my cross multiplying, 3 times 3 becomes a 9. And then that's all going to be less than or equal to 2x minus 1. Okay? So now I'm simply going to move the 1 over here to isolate my variable. So the opposite of subtraction is addition. So 10 is less than or equal to 2x. Divide both sides by 2. So I end up with 5 is less than or equal to x. Okay? 5 is less than or equal to x. Now, to graph that, here's 0, and here's 5, okay? So if 5 is less than or equal to x, it might be easier if you just flip this entire expression to say x is greater than or equal to 5, okay? Because if you look at it, it's still, everything's still pointing the same way. That might be easier for you to graph, okay? So this time I'm going to make a closed circle because it's greater than or equal to 5, and 5 would be part of my solution set. So I'm going to shade everything to the right, okay? Hopefully I didn't confuse you there, but it's the same thing. 5 less than or equal to x, okay, means x is greater than or equal to 5. All right, so here's the last one for the day. -3 times x minus 8. And this one's going to be greater than or equal to 9. Okay? So since I see parentheses, I'm going to distribute. So that gives me -3x. Then when I multiply the -3 by the 8, that's going to create a sign change because a negative times a negative creates a positive. And all of that's going to be greater than or equal to 9. Okay? So then my next step would be to subtract 24 from both sides. So that gives me a -3x is greater than or equal to 9 minus 24 becomes a negative 15. So then I divide both sides by a negative 3. Now, here comes that golden rule of an inequality. When I am multiplying or dividing by a negative, my sign does what? It flips. So that's going to become x less than or equal to negative 15 divided by negative 3 gives me a positive sign. So a positive 5. Two negatives make a positive. Okay? So to come over here and graph that now. So I put 5 on my number line. And since I'm doing x is less than or equal to 5, it's going to be a closed circle because 5 is included in my solution set. Since it's less than or equal to, and I would shade everything to the left, indicating values less than or equal to 5. All right, so that concludes the activator problems for the day. So you can go to the comparing scientific notation function assignment now and have a great weekend. Thank you for all of your hard work and your dedication during this time. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And remember, we rise by lifting others.